For the challenge for the Vermona today, it has the task of controlling two synthesizer modules from Korg, the Karp Odyssey, and the MS-20m. There are two ways to control these synths, and that's with control voltage or with MIDI. And MIDI is the connection that is, to most people, I assume, the most comprehensive way to do it. So each module has a MIDI in port, and the Vermona has only one MIDI out. So if we have something like the MIDI Solutions through box with 3 MIDI cables, we can connect the side that says MIDI in into the MIDI out of the Vermona, so that the Vermona is sending its signals through the box and passing it on to 2 different sources, which would be MS-20 and the Karp Odyssey. Now the connections are made and the Vermona is controlling the synths independently, yet at the same time. Now then, let's see what our controllers can do. Starting with the Karp Odyssey. Our proportional pitch controls work. Octave switch works. Portamento works. On the controller itself, the pitch bend works. The mod wheel does not. It does respond to octave changes from the controller, octave up or octave down. There's also different modes for the Vermona. An ARP. So now let's check out the MS-20. The portamento works, but the pitch bend and the mod wheel both do not. Both synths now together with the Vermona out. There is a few advantages controlling these two synths this way, in that you can have a different portamento setting for both synths. You can use this octave switch for the Karp Odyssey without affecting the MS-20, but if you want things to be in unison, this isn't at all a good way to go about doing that. So let's try a different sort of connection now. Instead of using both MIDI, let's try using the Vermona CV ports. So we're going to take the MIDI out of the Vermona and keep that attached to the Korg MS-20. And we see that the ARP Odyssey has some CV inputs, which is good because the Vermona 14 has some CV outputs. On the ARP Odyssey module, and for the other versions as well, the CV is 1/8 inch, which is okay because the Vermona has both sizes. Now we see something interesting happening. We're no longer using MIDI with the ARP Odyssey. The proportional pitch controls don't work anymore. The portamento is unresponsive, and the octave buttons don't work. Only the vibrato one in the middle has any effect still. The mod wheel and the pitch bend on the Vermona don't affect it, but the octave switch does. So this isn't an ideal way to control the ARP Odyssey. It seems to respond better through MIDI. However, it's the opposite for the Korg MS-20. If we bring out this one and turn up this one, you'll see that the MS-20 does not respond to the entire range of notes through MIDI. So let's try to use our CV to control Korg MS-20. So now we've disconnected MIDI from both, and now we're using CV for controlling both synthesizers. Now that's pretty neat, I guess. What you could also do This is of course disastrous because portamento now doesn't work on either one of these. This octave switch is of no use, and it's only this thing on here that works. The vibrato. So this isn't a way to control these two machines at all. It's better to go with the MIDI connection. But we're addressing the two synths separately. I think that if we start with the ARP Odyssey, control that one first, and use the ARP Odyssey to then control the MS-20, then would be in business and able to make use of all these controls. So, in order to do that, there's a few different ways of doing that, because we have so many different kinds of connections we can make. The idea now is to use the MIDI out of the Vermona to the MIDI in of the ARP Odyssey. The ARP Odyssey will take the incoming data from the MIDI signal and, in a word, translate that into CV information, which will then be passed along to the Korg MS-20. So it has a few out ports. Gate out is the top one, CV out is the next. It also has trigger out, but we don't need to make use of that. So here we have the gate. And we have CV for the pitch. We'll take a few patch cables and make the trigger go into the gate and the CV in volts per octave coincide with the pitch out from the ARP Odyssey. So then one more time, let's discuss what's happening. We're sending the MIDI out to the ARP Odyssey, and just as before, all of these controls work now. But the coolest thing is this switch and this portamento that information is passed on to the MS-20 because these are linked to the control voltage. So let's take out the ARP Odyssey, and only we hear the MS-20. It's responding to the octave switch. Take out the ARP, the chord, and put up the ARP. The MS-20 is responding to the full range of these pitch controls. We're only able to pitch bend one whole step, but the cool thing is, while that applies to the ARP Odyssey, it also works in unison with the MS-20. So if we hear both synths together, they're both bending together, up and down, one whole step. And if we want that range increased, we use the pitch controls on the ARP Odyssey. The portamento also is passed on. So this portamento knob on the MS-20 only responds to MIDI, so that won't do us any good. So now the MS-20 is borrowing the portamento setting from the ARP Odyssey because that's passing along. So now not only are we able to pitch bend in unison, but the portamento is in unison as well. And that's all thanks to using the CV and gate out into these junctions and sending the trigger in and the CV in per octaves to the junctions here. And by the way, I'm using the third junction with the signal out to send that in. into the Euro rack, where we have the Erica Synths Black Hole DSP add effects.